Temperatures in the minus 20s across the prairies, minus 30s in some places already. It's 7:30 Eastern. It's just after 5:30 Mountain. Great to see you, Suzanne Leonard and the team. Storm watch, Arctic air, massive storm stretching from Newfoundland and all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico with dramatically different conditions along it, I can tell you that. We had 18 degrees as a high today in Washington, D.C., and about 18 centimeters of snow in Ottawa. Hours of freezing rain that followed. B.C., not freezing rain, but rain and mountain snows, and boy, is it coming down heavily today. Some of the local ski hills, 30 centimeters of snow in the last 24 hours. That's good news. Great news for skiers and snowboarders, but the avalanche risk is going to skyrocket for tomorrow. So please keep that in mind. We'll talk about the plume in the west and this big plume of moisture in the east. We've got warnings in just about every province. Snow in blue. Green is rain, and there's plenty of it still coming for Nova Scotia. Another wave actually offshore moving in tonight. And it's dry for now in Ottawa. You know, Ottawa had, I mentioned 18 conditions, and now it's the cold and the wind picking up that we're concerned about for not just Eastern Ontario, Southern Quebec, but all the way through these two massive provinces. And snow squalls are starting to set up coming off Lake Huron and Georgian Bay. If I switch you over to the radar, again, snow is blue, so it's all snow now. There's a little burst in Michigan coming through southwestern Ontario, and you can start to see a bit of the banding here as the lake effect winds or the winds over the lake start to create these streamers, these long strips of snow. Now, this is a bit of a front coming through, the cold front followed by a secondary front, and temperatures dropping, and the amounts of snow that we've got in the forecast vary quite a bit. Quick freeze conditions, by the way, as well. Anything that's wet is going to turn to ice. Any liquid rain, and temperatures were above zero today in southern Ontario. What a huge contrast with the north. I was near Parry Sound today, and the forecast, the temperature was just above minus 10 for just about all day long. Snowfall amounts, 10 to 20 centimeters of snow around the south end of Georgian Bay, and northwesterly winds, and that burst of snow coming through evening and overnight. Variable conditions, bands setting up more organized fashion, and we'll have some snow accumulations around the greater Toronto region, especially north and east of the city. The big freeze with lake effect conditions, and again, a combination of snowfall, freezing rain, and winter storm warnings stretching from the Ottawa Valley through the Maritimes, rainfall for Nova Scotia, and wind on either side of the Cabot Strait. Now, I want to go to Western Canada because we've got some active weather there. I mentioned the rain picking up across Nova Scotia. It's rain and snow for British Columbia. And our Mark Robinson has been on location in Squamish today, reporting on conditions there. And plenty of it at high elevations. And Mark, the second of two back-to-back systems, comes in for tomorrow. A little snow tomorrow morning for Calgary. And we'll be back as Storm Watch continues. Well, getting to the ski hills might be the big challenge, but there's plenty of fresh snow. Whistler, I was looking at Cypress, one of Vancouver's local hills, 30 centimeters between mid-afternoon yesterday and mid-afternoon today. Coming up, a look across the country. Storm watch here from coast to coast will go. Suzanne Leonard, and I'm just one of the big team that's on today to bring you the latest with the rain still coming around the lower mainland. And although we've got winter storm warnings for the south coast, including Vancouver still, elevation has everything to do with whether you're getting wet snow, straight snow, or down at sea level, you're getting plenty of rain today. And we've got a snowfall warning around Williams Lake and heavy snow across the mountain passes, 20 to 40 centimeters on the way to a number of these areas. Very poor travel conditions. Now, one of my favorite places when in Vancouver is Stanley Park, no question, and it's a great vantage point, as Mark Robinson found out earlier today, for viewing the storms. Absolutely, Mark, especially when you're, prepared with the forecast and wearing the right gear. As we travel across the Rocky Mountains, it's not stormy weather, but it's an outbreak of cold Arctic air. And we were saying earlier in the holiday period, this is the coldest of the season. This is even colder. Arctic high pressure settling in. Wind chills making it feel like the minus 40s. Air temperatures in the minus 30s and in northern Ontario. So we've got an extreme cold warning Environment Canada has issued. And the temperatures continue to tumble in southern Ontario. And the cold air will probably prompt some cold weather alerts for big cities later this week. Certainly snow squall watches and warnings, and we'll take a look at the radar in just a second. In southern Ontario, snow is rolling through, and lake effect bands are starting to set up. If you take a look at this latest image of Georgian Bay and Lake Huron, you can just see those lines. Not quite as clear as Lake Superior, but it's all moving in. And she's moved out into the elements for us today. Kasia Badurka with the latest on southern Ontario's blast of winter. Thanks, Kasia. Great summary there. And I'm glad you mentioned the wind chill because it's already about minus 19 in Sudbury. It's actually minus 17 to be precise, the air temperature, and it's minus 26 up in Kapuskasing. So it's that brand of cold Arctic air that's pushing south and pushing these snowfall amounts up through Monday, 10 to 20 centimeters in parts of the snow belt. The cold air flowing over the Great Lakes. The system's moved out. We'll see some snow around the Toronto-Hamilton region, mainly to the north and east through Monday. Meanwhile, a stormy night ahead. Still freezing rain winding down in Quebec, continuing in parts of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. The rainfall, very active weather, colder tomorrow right now in Quebec. At least it's +3, not minus 30. We've got some minus 30 temperatures right now, though, in parts of northern Ontario, and just a colorful grocery list of warnings here, from rain and snow squalls to wind and extreme cold. The winter storm warning for Vancouver has been dropped, but you can see that warnings paint the country, and frigid cold Arctic air is helping to fuel two big scenarios here. One is the cold outbreak in the prairie provinces. The other is the large low, a Texas low that rode up the jet stream into eastern Canada. Temperature in Washington, D.C. today was 18 degrees. Contrast that with our capital, where it is going to become frigid. We did have 18 centimeters of snow for Ottawa, followed by hours of freezing rain. Now, we've got extreme cold warnings that stretch from northern New Brunswick through Ontario and Quebec, or Quebec and Ontario in order, and all the way across the prairies. I'll take you to the west coast in a moment. Big snow there, strong winds coming across the Atlantic provinces this evening and overnight, and you can see they pick up as this frontal system comes through. Behind it, cold air. Ahead of it, snow changing to rain. It's your turn in Newfoundland. And there's your wake-up trend for the Maritimes, getting colder still during the day. Temperatures have been falling all day long in Ontario. Kasia Badurka is out in the elements, reporting for us from Stratford, Ontario tonight. And Kasia, it's not over yet. After a mild day, it's turning into a frigid night. January the 4th. This is the first big storm of the new year. And of course, we're just a few days into it. This is your wake up trend, minus double digits, most areas, close to minus 20, closer to minus 30, how it'll feel in the Ottawa Valley. And those extreme cold warnings extend with wind chills close to minus 40, how it'll feel tomorrow morning. Edmonton and Lloydminster and Winnipeg around the same trend as well. Mark Robinson has been joining us from British Columbia today with the latest on the snow and now the rain around Vancouver. Okay, so 130,000 customers have lost power. That's the latest number from the province of Quebec. We've had some power outages in Ontario. There is some freezing rain in New Brunswick. It's good to see you. It's just after 9 o'clock in the Maritimes and just after 6 in BC. Rainfall warning now issued for Metro Vancouver. 10 to 20 millimeters so far, an additional 30 to 40 by tomorrow morning. Some localized flooding, certainly water pooling on local roads. Heavy snow in the mountain passes and a quick freeze for roads in Ontario. Temperatures are already close to minus 20 in the Nickel Belt region. That's about sort of a halfway point, many people say, for Ontario. Most of the population lives in the south, most of the land masses in the north, but I digress. Two big storm systems as we continue with our in-depth, up-to-the-minute storm watch analysis. And really, this is a very busy weekend for us all here at the Weather Network. Stacks of warnings coming in. I know Kim McDonald was talking about that earlier. And a big plume of moisture paralleling the Atlantic seaboard. D.C. got to 18 degrees today. Our capital, 18 centimeters of snow. Quite a difference in conditions across the front, and the temperatures continue to plummet the further north you go. But that cold air sweeping south. There's snow. There's some freezing rain or a wet snow mix in red and central and parts of southern New Brunswick. Rain is going to continue intensively, not just for BC, but for Nova Scotia tonight. We've got rainfall warnings there. But really, this is a story of cold and some very bitter winter conditions. This is freezing now. Temperatures are perhaps still just above zero in parts of the south, but they continue to drop. Cold air dropping down near Kitchener. We've been checking in with our reporter Kasia Badurka throughout the evening, and she's reporting on the wind chills. And if you're heading out the door now and you haven't been out since this afternoon, you're going to find quite a different feel to the air. The winds are going to continue to gust through the overnight. There's that lake effect band coming down Georgian Bay. You can see a bit of banding now south of Goderich, around Grand Bend, off Lake Superior. A little bit of snow with the cold front coming through, a secondary front really dropping temperatures, and then the winds. And although the Great Lakes continue to freeze up, there's still plenty of open water, and it's centimeters in the snow belt, a couple to 5 centimeters. And rather than the Golden Horseshoe, it looks like it might that we see some snow accumulations. Temperatures, icy roads, quick freeze conditions, all part of the story. Now, freezing rain warnings along with winter storm warnings are continuing for a large part of Quebec on into New Brunswick. Ontario and Quebec, for all intents and purposes, the storm is basically done except for eastern areas. Labrador and Newfoundland is just getting going. Rainfall warnings, snow and wind warnings, or snow-related wind warnings, and winter storm warnings for Deer Lake. That's going to be snow for Halifax as well to start off with. Just a mess. Snow followed by freezing rain, followed by rain in some cases. Rain is continuing around the south shore of Nova Scotia, and about 40 millimeters of rain all told. Could be locally more than that. Similar amounts to what we're seeing in BC in some ways. Snowfall amounts are already well over 30 centimeters for some of the local hills. For travel across British Columbia, and winter storm and snowfall warnings in the interior. Snow levels going to be rising, but the snowfall amounts for the Coquihalla, for the connector, special weather statements for the passes in the interior of British Columbia. And those are your forecast amounts through Tuesday morning. We will be back. Travel safe. Storm Watch continues right here at the Weather Network. A lot of cold air and a lot of wind and extreme wind chills, feeling like the minus 20s, the minus 30s, and the minus 40s across Canada tonight. Good that you could join us. Suzanne Leonard with a big team here, Stormwatch, as we continue to bring you up to date with warnings in just about every province. And it is a winter blast, no question, with extreme cold warnings, for example, stretching from northern Alberta all the way through southern Manitoba and on to Ontario, Quebec, and into New Brunswick. Brandon, which isn't far from Winnipeg, guess what the wind chill was this morning? It was about minus 51. Twice as cold as this, Prince George. That's your forecast for Monday morning. And Calgary's going to be getting into some snow overnight through Monday morning. And look at these temperatures and wind chills. That's a bit below average for this time of year. Yes, it's winter in Canada, and it sure looks like it. Squamish, BC, of course, Howe Sound and the rock climbing and the sailing and the skiing and snowboarding in season. And that's the season we're in right now. Very heavy snow. Temperatures and wind chills across the prairie provinces. I want to continue with this because once we get to the minus 30 range, that's when frostbite can set in 30 minutes or less. Get up to the minus 40 range and look at Brandon and Winnipeg and parts of northern Ontario, frostbite in 10 minutes or less. We're already down to about minus 17 air temperature in Sudbury. It's going to drop by about another 10 degrees. And as cold as you are in southern Ontario tonight, know that it's far colder to the north. Extreme cold warnings continue right through northern New Brunswick. And the really stormy weather has moved on from Ontario. 20 centimeters of snow, close to it for Ottawa. Hours of freezing rain, just like Montreal. Over 100,000 customers in the province of Quebec, no power. Now, we've got lake effect snow in Ontario, which I'll get to in a second. I want to show you where the storm is still really got its teeth sunk in, and it's in Atlantic Canada. It's dried up somewhat in the Maritimes. Conditions will continue to lessen in intensity overnight, precipitation-wise, but the wind will be picking up. And those are winds out of the west. And as that front comes through, expect temperatures to start dropping dramatically. Far warmer in St. John's tomorrow. It's snow changing over to rain. Some freezing rain concerns, mainly central inland areas around that warm front. Over to rain, snow behind the low. Look at the winds howling across the Gulf. It'll be over 60 kilometers an hour for sustained winds in a number of areas and even stronger gusts around the shoreline areas. So that's a snapshot of Atlantic Canada. Now let's take you to Ontario, shall we? System snow as the main storm system comes through with a bit of a trailing front that's brought a little extra lift today. Kasia was talking about it earlier when she was reporting from Stratford. Notice our winds in the 40 kilometer an hour range through southern Ontario out of the west. to northwest across Georgian Bay, bringing wind chills and bringing some whiteout. So again, our wind chills, a big story. Find out your local forecast numbers in more detail. That's coming up in just a couple of minutes from now as we continue with Stormwatch Coast to Coast. The first full week of January 2015. This week, the frigid air across the east, and your local forecast has much more next. Up and make sure you got good boots on. It started at about 3 a.m. Good to see you. Suzanne Leonard with you. If you're just coming back online in Montreal, it's especially good to see you. I know about 15,000 people got put back on over the supper hour, 6 to 8 o'clock. Still some big outages, though. Pierrefonds, Verdun, NDG, LaSalle. 150,000 customers, no power at peak earlier today. That's the province of Quebec. And here's the entire country. What a list of warnings. Wind, snowfall, extreme cold, freezing rain, still a concern in parts of New Brunswick, but winding down. Lots of extreme cold, though. Anything in purple. Winter storm warnings dropped for Vancouver, but you're under a rain warning. And we are in full storm watch mode from coast to coast as Arctic air blasts down across the prairies. Air temperatures right now in most areas are in the minus 20s, if not colder. And that cold air is going to push deeper and deeper into Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada, too. Nova Scotia. We appreciate that. Looking at the snow fell first, then the rain for many of you, and the freezing rain mixing in. And the extreme cold warnings continue from New Brunswick through northern Quebec and Ontario all the way across the prairies as the storm comes through tonight. Now, you've had the worst of it. The precipitation will ease in intensity, but the winds will be picking up through the overnight hours. And that's a great snapshot of 60-kilometer-an-hour sustained winds near the shoreline areas, wind warnings either side of the Cabot Strait, rainfall warnings for southern Nova Scotia, and freezing rain an ongoing concern in central New Brunswick, but by tomorrow morning, things should be much improved. In Ontario, it's the opposite. We are, I can't really say, Kasia, that we're improving, but Kasia Badurka has been reporting for us tonight in Stratford. At least the prolonged heavy precipitation is finished, but you'd be in a great position to tell me whether it's improved or got worse out there. Suzanne? Yeah, it is. Toronto minus 18 and Ottawa minus 28, morning wind chills. And it's this cold blast that continues with extreme cold warning stretching from Winnipeg through Regina, Saskatoon, all the way up to Edmonton. Vancouver is not under extreme cold warnings. Calgary is not under a snow warning, but with your wind chills tomorrow morning, you're also going to get some snow and blowing snow, and it picks up tonight. Wind chills across the prairies. Clipper systems riding along the jet stream, as Chris St. Clair was mentioning earlier. Next storm, second of two for BC. Jet stream goes up, warms up, cools down the rest of the country. Snowfall, it's certainly with us in many parts of the country as Stormwatch continues.